The crisis at sea was between Britain and Germany. Britain wanted to strangle Germany by naval blockade, while Germany wanted to cut off food and supplies by sea warfare. Germany's sea warfare was mainly conducted by submarines known as U-boats. U-boat stands for undersea boat. The U-boat is a German submarine. U-boats destroying enemy ships were a huge deal in both world wars. Naval warfare in World War I was the Allied powers trying to stop the Central Powers by sea. The Central Powers would break their blockade to establish a blockade of their own to stop the UK. The HMS Dreadnought was launched in 1906. The HMS Dreadnought was a battleship of the British that changed the nature of the German naval race, changing the Great War. A hybrid version of the boat was followed in 1914 when all the big navies showed their strength by the number of dreadnoughts and battleships they had. When he was first Sea Lord, Fisher began making naval warfare plans against Germany. He had tons of battleships scrapped or reduced to harbor responsibilities. The resources were saved in order to make new submarines, light cruisers, battle cruisers, destroyers, and dreadnoughts. Fisher said, quote unquote, "We shall have 10 dreadnoughts at sea before a single foreign dreadnought is launched, and we have 30% more cruisers than Germany and France put together." Naval technology in the First World War was dominated by the dreadnought ship. The British ships had bigger guns and were equipped and had the equipment to fire faster than German ships. But the German ships had greater optical equipment and range finding was much better on German ships. Germans were able to deal with damage. The German ship also had better propellant handling plans than the British. This would be major consequences for the British ships at the Battle of Jutland. The North Sea was where the most action was at. The British Grand Fleet took place against the German High Seas Fleet. If Britain does a larger fleet, they could blockade Germany, stopping them from getting overseas trade and of course resources. The English Channel is important to the British Expeditionary Force. They were fighting in France. There were absolutely no big battleships in the British Royal Navy inside the Channel. The biggest threat to the British was a German High Fleet base near Heligoland. If the German fleet was successful in the North Sea, then they could destroy any ship in the Channel very easily. When in the Atlantic Ocean, Germany was strangled by a blockade by the British forces blockade because Britain was highly relying on resources shipped out by sea. German U-boats had limited effect against the British surface battleships on guard, but U-boats had great effect on merchant ships. In the Black Sea, the combat was between Austria-Hungary and Germany against some of the Allied forces such as Britain, Italy, Japan, and France. The military of the Ottoman Empire only dealt with Dardanelles once in the late war because they only wanted to focus on operations in the Black Sea. The Baltic Sea was Russia against Germany. There were a number of British submarines sailing through the Kattegat to help out the Russians. German fleet was large, and modern lots of high sea fleets could easily be developed and sent to the Baltic Sea when the North Sea isn't busy. Russians played more of a defensive role in the Baltic Sea, as most attacking was between Germany against Sweden. In other oceans, German ships were stationed overseas at the start of the First World War, and they would engage in activities like raiding operations in bad defense areas like SMS Emden, which took place in the Indian Ocean, sinking 30 Allied merchant ships and also their battleships. They bombarded Madras and Penang and breaking a radio relay on Cocos Islands before they got sunk by the HMAS Sydney.